So I was listening to a sermon earlier this week, and it starts out with, "I'm so glad to be here, and I love seeing all your faces out there this morning," which is fairly common. You hear that all the time. But this time, when I knew that I was going to be up here this Sunday, I thought to myself, truth be told, I'm so anxious to be up here this morning. And I do love seeing all your faces this morning, just not all looking at me at the same time. So I came to appreciate that a little bit more when somebody says that. Me being up here is not my cup of tea. As Andrew can show you, that's my cup of tea right there. I think that was either a Father's Day present or Becky, but yep, that's what I have to use for my tea diffuser. So me at home, sitting at my desk, that's where I enjoy, right there. Just peaceful, and that's not where I am today. That's not where the Lord wants me to be today. So I'm here where I need to be, and I need to get over that. But I am nervous, and you'll see it all morning, and yes, I'm going to stick very close to these notes because that's where my security is right now. But if I can't think of a word, or if I stumble across something, then I may just call out on one of your names to help me out with a word. And Stephen, I've got a seating chart here, so I can call on anybody. All right. Today is going to be for the Lord. That's who's in charge, and that's who is allowing me to be up here to share with y'all. I wouldn't be otherwise. So please find what He wants you to hear today and not just listen to what I'm saying. I grew up in the woods. Yes, we are going that far back. My dad was very clear to me when I was growing up that it was not the forest, it was just the woods. I don't know what the difference is, but I wanted to grow up in the forest. He said, we're just in the woods. We didn't have any neighbors except for my grandparents that just lived a very short walk through the woods. So aside from one security light at night, there were no lights anywhere that I could see. It was just dark out there. But growing up during the daytime, I soon got very comfortable. I loved playing. I loved building huts in the edge of the yard and jumping on wet trampolines in the summertime. I think you all get my point. It was simpler times, and I just enjoyed it thoroughly. The biggest worry that I had was that my sister would feed me dirt. And of course, I ate it because she gave it to me on a spoon, so it must be good. And yes, I had to put that jab in there for her because she's not here to defend herself. All right, so let's go one step further. I started school. Now, if there's anybody out there like me who doesn't like to raise their hand, you probably never wanted to in school anyway, so you don't have to do it now. But I did not like school. I mean, yes, I enjoyed seeing my friends and all, but Mr. Jerry could probably finish the sentence, but let's move on. I was not a star student. School taught me, and I didn't enjoy it. I look back, and I'm thankful for what school taught me, but I don't want to live it again. The bottom line of school is it was just different from when I was at home playing. It was just something new that I had to start, and I didn't like it. I wanted to be at home. I wanted to be outside playing. So, moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and warn y'all that when I get nervous, my nose starts running. So, there'll be my telltale sign. I'll just show you my poker sign right away. It's just my nose is going to start running. So let's go on. Let's move a little bit faster here. So you don't take notes on all this stuff. We're going to cruise pretty fast. So growing up, we changed churches. My dad started working nights. I got a job. My sister got married. I finished school, or so I thought. I finished high school. I was working 2 jobs now. My high school friends started to kind of fade out a little bit. Everybody's interests changed. You don't see those people every day anymore. I do still very much remember my mother waiting up till 1 or 2 in the morning for when I got off of work, just so she could hear how her son's day went, if I wanted to talk about it, or if I just wanted to watch Mystery Science Theater 3000. If anybody remembers that, you don't have to go back, but It was just something that my mom and I did. She could bond with me, and we had a good time. Yeah. Yes. All right. So I met Becky, love of my life, and that's a whole nother story. I couldn't cram that into this. So that's for later. We got married. We got a new house. I went off to college. We went off to college. We had our first child, moved back home, second child. Now I'm going to slow down. I'm a dentist living back in my hometown. I'm 45 years old, and I've got two fast-growing boys. And yes, I'm going to talk about them later. Mortgage, car payments, insurance, retirement, bills, groceries, laundry, all of that stuff. What happened to my growing up in the woods? It had so many changes, and that's what I want to talk about today. I zipped through all of those things just so I could talk about changes. This world never changes, and no one is immune to its effects. Heraclitus, yes, I did look that up. Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man." Oh, it's very true. Not only does everything around us change, but we change, and our outlook on life changes as the years pass. Now, I want to jump back again, because that's what they do on TV shows and everywhere else. You've got the sequel, and then you've got the prequel, and then you've got the midquel, sidequel, and there is an interquel. I didn't know that, but sorry, that's my nerd showing up in me. So I'm going to start over. I was raised in a Christian home with Christian ideals that were taught and lived. I was raised in the church, and I'm thankful every day for that. Most everybody I knew were Christians. This is the Bible Belt. My outlook on life was pretty strong with God being the creator of it all my entire time growing up. But as I grew and my world got bigger, I began to see the hurt and the lost in the world. Talking with people as I got older, their problems seemed to get bigger and bigger and more complicated. And my problems got bigger and bigger and more complicated. I noticed that not everybody, and I know this was me growing up, but not everybody had a common goal that we all work towards. You know, when you have ideals, especially when you're younger and their ideals, you kind of want to say everybody's growing up like this and they all have the same ideals. I know that's not true. I know very much that that's not true. So I started to see selfishness in people, bitterness in people, meanness, and I even saw that in the church. Now, stepping back, when I was very little, I heard a sermon one time from a pastor that's long passed away now, and it was entitled Sheep Bite. And I understood it a little bit, but now, growing up, I never realized that God was kind of preparing me how to cope with this world, because the flock in the church, it still bites. We all want to work towards that same goal, but sometimes we get in the way. And yes, me too. I saw selfish and bitterness in me in a changing world. I wasn't happy about those changes. But I didn't waver with God. I was just troubled with the world. And I still am troubled with the world. Lord knows what's going on in the world right now. It's easy for you to come up with an answer, but whenever we put everybody else in the mix, it complicates things. So John once said something that stuck with me. That John. He said, and you can correct me later, he said he thinks that God doesn't reveal all of our sins to us at the moment that we're saved. Because if we did, it would be so overwhelming that we would be lost with grief. Is that about right? So can you imagine if the same thing happened when you were a child? If God allowed you to comprehend the sins of this world, the suffering, the hypocrisy, the murders, the scandals, all the temptations of this world when you're young, and then mix that in with trying to build a meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ? I mean, Lord help us all. I'm amazed, but I'm thankful that God is faithful and He will not let me be tempted beyond what I can bear. He'll ease it into me, as He sees fit. That's what 1 Corinthians 10:13 says. So let me get back on track. Let me talk about the boys. I love both of my boys with an agape love, just like God has for me. I love them. I love to hear them reminisce of when they were young. They talk about swinging on the front porch. They talk about being pushed down the street in a little car or playing with one of our old dogs. I love to hear them when a sentence starts with, "I can remember when," because I know it's going to be a good story. And usually involve me having to remember a name of a place or somewhere we ate whenever they were young, because they couldn't remember, and we go through a whole rigmarole of that. But I love it. When any of us speak about those memories that we have, they're so strong in our minds because we look back, and it's easy to find those good things whenever time was simpler and we had simpler things. And it's hard to see those things from a bird's eye. It's easy to see those from a bird's eye view. It's hard to pick them out whenever we're in the middle of it all and we can't see how to get out of those situations that we're dealing with. That takes me back to an Audio Adrenaline song that I heard in 1993. And yes, there were electric guitars and there were bagpipes. It was the 90s and it was the middle of grunge music, and I loved it. But the song was called My Worldview. And I used to sing it all the time whenever I was going through hard times, because it refers to seeing the world through God's eyes. Only then can we truly see that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. And that's dead in Romans 8:28, what we've been talking about. It's hard to see that in the middle, but it's easy when we're praying that God will give us that view that He has. And yes, that's the exact last line of the song, too. This world changes and changes and changes, and we change from time to time, from the time that we're one single cell in our mother's womb where God knit us together uniquely, all the way until we're our trillions of cells that we are now, and somehow we're able to fathom what I'm trying to say today. With all of the changes in our world and in our country and with our loved ones and with our bodies, getting old. And I know I'm not old, but I'm getting old. Our perspective on life, based on our circumstances, changes. All of these things change. But God is unchanging. Malachi 3:6 says, "For I, the Lord, do not change." Oh my goodness, in this world, God tells us that I can count on something not changing. And it's the most important thing in this world. In Psalms 100, verse 5, it says, "For the Lord is good, and His loving devotion endures forever. His faithfulness continues to all generations." And go back to Malachi. That doesn't change. All of those things don't change. So we've got an everlasting, unchanging, infinite God over a fleeting, changing, finite world. I can't imagine living here without Him. It would be a hard, hopeless existence. So, have there been any changes over the last couple of years? The world we were familiar with. Travel has stopped. School stopped. Parties stopped. Going to church stopped. Our government shut down. Businesses closed for good. People lost jobs. Health care changed forever. Supply shortages. And let's not even talk about gas prices. Bottom line is, our world has been shaken to its core over the last couple of years, and people have suffered. Even if your faith is strong, when you lose a family member, that change is devastating. When your lifelong business closes its doors and the hunt for a new paycheck is on, people ask God why. Things we counted on or took for granted as we now question those things each and every day. And that's our new norm. A line was drawn in history. I'm sure y'all look up YouTube videos. Now, when I look up YouTube videos, I mean, I do something like a sermon or a topic, and usually I'll look at the date now. But if I forget to look at the date, it's funny to listen, and somebody will say something, and I'll say, wait a minute. We don't even do that anymore. When was this video made? And it'll only be a couple years before. It's just things have changed so drastically. My family came through COVID bruised and battered. It was not much that we could count on, but we still looked towards God for encouragement and for our new normal. And we thought, we're coming out of this, things are calming down, and we can kind of get back into a groove. I mean, Eli and I had just gotten back into going fishing on a regular basis, or at least untangling the fishing line. If you ask me to describe the sound of change, I've got this right here. And if anybody was asleep, I was going to pop this, but I think everybody's still listening. This is the sound of change for me. This is the sound that I heard that changed my life. Most everybody up here was here whenever we talked a little bit later, but I'll just go back. My son was burned back in March. A rubbing alcohol bottle exploded. And so that's the sound that we heard, and that's the sound that we'll never forget in our house. It was different for me. I was outside. I think for Tyson it was a lot louder than that. But it's something that we'll never forget. So change came with no warning. We had no prep time. I got no text. We got no email. It was just a calm Sunday afternoon. And then we were at the ER. Life flighted 4 hours away. Surgery was by the stroke of midnight. Just boom, boom, boom. I had to chase a chopper to Augusta because there was only room for one person in the chopper, and that was Tyson. So I had a 3.5-hour ride. And all I did was pray to God. And for anybody that knows, if I have more than about 15 minutes in the car, I've got the radio on. But I prayed the whole time for my son and for my family because we were split up. So change happened. He was fighting for his life. My work was completely off the table. All of a sudden, I didn't even think about it driving up there. I didn't even think about having another pair of underwear. I was just gone. Mr. Jimmy, I think you made the comment going up to North Carolina. About 15 minutes and you were gone. That's you just think about what God wants for you and what you need to do and get that done. Change came in the form of the next weeks. We lived split lives between two towns. And one of my precious gifts from God was having to learn what true, deep, and unrelenting pain was. More than I had ever suffered. No story that I could tell. No, I've been through this to calm your nerves. All I could do was cry out to God. For basically what Jim was talking about, going back to Romans 8:26, it says the Spirit helps us in our weakness. And when we do not know what to pray, the Spirit intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance to the will of God. That's truly where my whole family was. We did not know why, but we knew who to look to. And the people that helped us are still revealing themselves. Every day I'll hear of another family or another person that prayed for my son that I don't know or didn't know that they even knew my family. And I truly believe that those people were using that same Romans verse that I just referred to. They didn't know what to pray for, but they knew to pray. So before we even got out of the ICU at the burn center, the bills started coming in. And you hear about all the technology, the doctors are saying all the stuff that they can do, and not everybody, but me, I think, well, that sounds good and great. The latest technology, that's going to cost the most. And that's what I want for my son. I didn't hesitate. But they were coming in, and I saw the bills, and I didn't know what to do, but I reached out to God. So a little side note here, and I don't want to get off on this, but we use a company called MetaShare. This is not an advertisement for them, and if you ask them, I think the first thing they say is, we're not an insurance company. But they're a medical sharing group. That's not my point. It's a little different from insurance, and this is my point. Whenever I pay my premium, it goes into a savings account. And every month I get a statement, and it says exactly where my money went out to, who it went to based on the need, or it shows who paid into my account based on my need. I think you know where I'm going with this, but my normal monthly statement from this company is about 1 page, front to back, with letterhead and everything. So maybe 1 or 2 things from a doctor's visit or something. This right here is 1 month. And this, I know you can't see, but you can see these lists. These are names of people that paid into our account. These are people that didn't know my son. And I looked through all of these names, and I say, this is just 1 month. But these are people that gave money to us to help. And I didn't even know. I didn't ask for it. I just asked God to help us. Now, again, I didn't know what to ask for. That's the bottom line. The other thing that was furthest from my mind was a place to stay. I didn't necessarily even pray for a place to stay. I was up there with Tyson. That's what was important to me. And a place was provided almost without us asking, even if we wanted to. It was there for us to use. And again, these are just things that God made a way for us in all of these changes. Tyson's home now, and back to normal is not what I would describe our house, but God is still very much a steady point every day in our lives. We try to live by Proverbs 27, verse 1. It says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what today may bring. Can you bring up that triangle? Does anybody know what that triangle stands for? And I thought it was in chemistry, but it's more in physics. It stands for change. I love that symbol because I don't have to write that word whenever I'm taking notes. That's the main reason I remember that symbol of all of the symbols in physics class. But I enjoy that symbol because it's not related to what I view it as, but I do think of the Holy Trinity with that. So I get to write that on a daily basis because it's the word change. But when I see it after I write it, I do think about God, and He's in charge of all of my changes. These changes in this world will rattle our emotions, whether good or bad. But we'll cling to God's unwavering sovereign constant and know that His promises are timely and timeless. That sounds like another sermon for somebody else. All right, so I've got a story here, and then I'll bring it to a close. It's been borrowed and told and stolen and added to, and so I get to put my little twist on it. But Douglas Copeland, I don't know who this man is, but he wrote some short stories. He's a Canadian, and he popularized the term Generation X. So I don't know anything else about him. But he did write in one of his books a short story about taking a tour of a botanical garden. And he talked about walking through the gardens and seeing the amazing flowers and trees and just all of the surroundings, all the beauty that was in the garden. And as he was walking, he heard some women talking on the other side of one of the hedges. He wasn't listening in, but he could hear that they were carrying on and having a good time. And then they called out for some help. They weren't startled. They just were asking if somebody could come over there and help them. So Douglas goes over to the other side and offers assistance. And he finds 3 blind women walking through the botanical gardens. And then they kindly ask him if he would take their picture. So he made a few comical comments on the puzzling situation, and then he moved on to his next story. But one commentator that I heard said, I think Douglas missed the beauty in this whole story. These ladies came to enjoy the botanical gardens just like he did. They smelled the fragrant blossoms. They felt the velvet petals and the grass beneath their feet. And they soaked up the sun as if they were flowers themselves. They listened to the birds. They listened to everybody else having a good time. They wanted to take the picture so that they could take it to their friends and describe their time at the botanical gardens and the day that they spent with their friends. They wanted others to see the beauty around them, the smiles on their faces, and show them how wondrous a place it was, sharing the amazing experiences with others. Isn't that a divine description of what a Christian should be in this world? Not knowing why events happen around us the way that they do, but being assured that God knows the plans he has for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, plans to give us a hope and a future. And that's Jeremiah 29:11. In this ever-changing world, God is the never-changing truth.